With respect to the FBI, I will tell you, I've had a chance to know a lot of FBI agents. I know Director Comey. And they take their job seriously, they work really hard, they help keep us safe and save a lot of lives. And it is always a challenge for law enforcement when there's an intersection between the work that they are doing and the political system. It's one of the difficulties of democracy, generally. We have a system where we want our law enforcement investigators and our prosecutors to be free from politics. To be independent, to play it straight, but sometimes that involves investigations that touch on politics. And particularly in this hyper-partisan environment that we've been in. Everything is suspect, everything you do one way or the other. One thing that I have done is to be pretty scrupulous about not wading into investigation decisions or prosecution decisions, or decisions not to prosecute. I have tried to be really strict in my own behavior about preserving the independence of law enforcement. Free from my own judgments and political assessments, in some cases. And I don't know why it would stop now. Mike Dorning of Bloomberg. Question, thank you, Mr. President. On Aleppo, your views that what happens there is the responsibility of the Russian government. The Iranian government, the Assad regime are pretty well aired. But do you, as President of the United States, leader of the free world, feel any personal moral responsibility now at the end of your presidency for the carnage that we're all watching in Aleppo? Which I'm sure disturbs you, which you said disturbs you. And, secondly, also on Aleppo, you've again made clear your practical disagreements with the idea of safe zones. And President-elect Trump has, throughout his campaign. And he said again last night that he wants to create safe zones in Syria. Do you feel like, in this transition, you need to help him toward implementing that? Or was that not something that you should be doing? President Obama, Mike, I always feel responsible. I felt responsible when kids were being shot by snipers. I felt responsible when millions of people had been displaced. I feel responsible for murder and slaughter that's taken place in South Sudan that's not. Being reported on partly because there's not as much social media being generated from there. There are places around the world where horrible things are happening. And because of my office, because I'm President of the United States, I feel responsible. I ask myself every single day, is there something I could do that would save? Lives and make a difference and spare some child who doesn't deserve to suffer. So that's a starting point. There's not a moment during the course of this presidency where I haven't felt some responsibility. That's true, by the way, for our own country. When I came into office and people were losing their jobs and losing their homes and losing their pensions. I felt responsible, and I would go home at night and I would ask myself, was there something? better that I could do or smarter that I could be that would make a difference in their lives. That would relieve their suffering and relieve their hardship. So with respect to Syria, what I have consistently done is taken the best course that I can to try to end the civil war while having also to take into account the long-term national security interests of the United States. And throughout this process, based on hours of meetings, if you tallied it up, days or weeks of meetings where we went through every option in painful detail with maps, and we had our military. And we had our aid agencies, and we had our diplomatic teams, and sometimes we'd bring in outsiders who were critics. Of ours whenever we went through it, the challenge was that, short of putting large numbers of you as troops on the ground, uninvited, without any international law mandate, without sufficient support from Congress. At a time when we still had troops in Afghanistan and we still had troops in Iraq. And we had just gone through over a decade of war and spent trillions of dollars, and when the opposition on the ground was not cohesive enough to necessarily govern a country, and you had a military superpower in Russia prepared to do whatever it took to keep its client state involved, and you had a regional military power in Iran that saw their own vital strategic interests at stake and were willing to send in as many of their people or proxies to support the regime that in that circumstance, unless we were all in and willing to take over Syria. We were going to have problems, and that everything else was tempting because we wanted to do something. And it sounded like the right thing to do, but it was going to be impossible to do this on the cheap. and in that circumstance, I have to make a decision as president of the United States as to what is best. I'm sorry, what's going on? Somebody's not feeling good? All right. Why don't we have we can get our doctors back there to help out. Does somebody want to go to my doctor's office and just have them all right? Where was I? Question, doing it on the cheap. President Obama, so we couldn't do it on the cheap. Now, it may be. Can somebody help out please and get Doc Jackson in here? Is somebody grabbing our doctor? Question, thank you, Mr. President, for stopping. President Obama, of course. In the meantime, just give her a little room. The doctor will be here in a second. You guys know. Where the doctor's office is. Just go through the palm doors. It's right next to the map room. There he is. All right. There's Doc Jackson. He's all right. Okay. The doctor is in the house. Question, you were saying you couldn't do it on the cheap. President Obama, and I don't mean that, I mean that with all sincerity. I understand the impulse to want to do something. But ultimately, what I've had to do is to think about what can we sustain, what is realistic. And my first priority has to be what's the right thing to do for America. and it has been our view that the best thing to do has been to provide some support to the moderate. Opposition so that they could sustain themselves, and that we wouldn't see anti-Assad regime sentiments just pouring into al-Nusra and al-Qaeda or ISIL, that we engaged our international partners in order to put pressure on all the parties involved. And to try to resolve this through diplomatic and political means. I cannot claim that we've been successful. And so that's something that, as is true with a lot of issues and problems around the world, I have to go to bed with every night. But I continue to believe that it was the right approach. Given what realistically we could get done absent a decision, as I said, to go in a much more significant way. And that, I think, would not have been sustainable or good for the American people because we had a hole. Host of other obligations that we also had to meet, wars we had already started and that were not yet finished. With respect to the issue of safe zones, it is a continued problem. A continued challenge with safe zones is if you're setting up those zones on Syrian territory. Then that requires some force that is willing to maintain that territory in. The absence of consent from the Syrian government and, now, the Russians or the Iranians. So it may be that with Aleppo's tragic situation unfolding, that in the short term, if we can get more of the tens of thousands who are still trapped there out, that so long as the world's eyes are on them and they are feeling pressure, the regime and Russia concludes that they are willing to find some arrangement. Perhaps in coordination with Turkey, whereby those people can be safe. Even that will probably be temporary, but at least it solves a short-term issue that's going to arise. Unfortunately, we're not even there yet, because right now we have Russians and Assad claiming that basically all the innocent civilians who were trapped in Aleppo are out when international organizations humanitarian organizations who know better and who are on the ground have said unequivocally that they're are still tens of thousands who are trapped and prepared to leave under pretty much any conditions. And so right now, our biggest priority is to continue to put pressure wherever we can to try to get them out. Question, notwithstanding. President Obama, I can't have too much. Question, on the second question, your intentions are well aired. But do you feel responsibility notwithstanding a move in that direction or help President-elect Trump move in that direction? President Obama, I will help President Trump, President-elect Trump with any advice. Counsel, information that we can provide so that he, once he's sworn in, can make a decision. Between now and then, these are decisions that I have to make based on the consultations. I have with our military and the people who have been working this every single day. Peter Alexander. Question, Mr. President, thank you very much. Can you, given all the intelligence that we have now heard, assure the public that this was, once and for all, a free and fair election?